You're listening to Stellar Success, Leveling Up for Medical Pros with Dr. Tudor Francu. Join us as we explore how medical professionals can achieve stellar success in all areas of life. It's time to level up.
Hello, everyone. We're back at Stellar Success Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Tudor Francu, and I have a great guest today, Dr. Arash Hakhamian. How are you, Doc?
I'm good. How are you, Tudor? Pleasure to be with you.
Absolutely. Dr. Arash, you're a very known dentist, educator, and personality in that field. What do you think success means to you?
Well, thank you. Thank you for that. Success, I guess it can mean a lot of things. Are we talking professional success or life success?
I think the one that you like.
I think success to me, depending on how we define it, but one of the things I look at is like my desire to get up out of bed in the morning. And whether I'm dragging because I just don't want to face what today has, or I'm up and, I'm
Excited.
I wake up at 5 a.m. So it's not, I'm not jumping for joy, but I'm excited to get the day started. I'm excited for what the day has to bring. So I think setting up your life in a way where you enjoy living it. I know it's a little cliche maybe, but I think that would be my definition of success. There'd be nothing worse than going through this routine day to day and hating every moment of it.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's a great definition. Very simple and to the point. Tell us a little bit about your story. How did you start? What was your journey and what do you do now?
My story kind of started from my father. My father, who's a dentist, I come from a line of dental professionals, mom, dad, brothers, sisters, everyone in dentistry. I actually was initially thinking about doing anesthesiology and or OBGYN. And somehow I went to UCLA, graduated with an anthropology degree, and somehow just ended up just taking over my father's business. And I wasn't generally excited about becoming a dentist initially. It just made sense, taking over my father's practice. But after graduating school, it just came easy to me. I really enjoyed it. I thought there was a good combination of art and science, and every case was dynamic. Everything was different. And for whatever reason, it came easy. And it was lucrative. At the beginning, we had autonomy over our practice. It really flowed well. And I really enjoyed just coming out of school and starting my own practice. And one practice led to the next. And I ended up having a bunch of clinics here in Southern California, and it was great. I did 10 years of clinical care, enjoyed every moment of it. I probably did 20 or 30 years of work in 10 years and hit all the different aspects from cosmetic dentistry to surgery, implants, and everything in between. And then shifted my career now into more the tech side and the backside of dentistry, and really helping advance the industry by finding innovative technologies and companies that can have an impact on our profession.
Interesting. So how did you evolve in your mindset from a graduated of a dental school and practicing in your own practice to evolve to do something else?
One of the initial we were institutionalized, right? From a very young age. We're going to school, we follow the rules, we follow direction, especially if you ever want to get into medical school or dental school or law school, any kind of professional trade. I think you learn that there's structure.
Yeah, it's very regimented.
It's very regimented.
Yeah. You need to do certain things to accomplish that.
That's right. And there's a rite of passage for us, right?
Right.
I realized, I think in dental school, I realized that maybe not all of the recommendations that were being said before us were always the best ones. And then I don't remember where I got this particular idea in my head, but it may have been from a book, it may have been from a lecture, but I realized that if the masses are going in one direction, it's generally a good idea to go in the opposite. And so I started really practicing that early on in dental school, and kind of going against the grain a little bit. If I saw, I started questioning a little bit of what was being told to me, and really analyzing whether it made sense or not. And so same thing when I came into private practice, I think that I started doing just about the exact opposite of everything that I was being told. They told me when I was graduating with about $500,000 in loans, to defer my loans as long as possible, right? Just defer them. Don't worry, they'll be forgiven in the future. So one of my first goals was to pay it off as quickly as possible, and I did. I paid off all my student loans within, I think, 2 years, 2 to 3 years of coming out of school.
That's impressive.
Yeah, it worked out. It worked out, and unfortunately, I was in a position where I could do that, but I didn't want that lingering over my head. They told us that we needed to go get some mentorship and work for a DSO, which is a corporate style chains of dentistry, where it's more corporate owned than individual practices. A lot of consolidation is occurring in dentistry, as has occurred in medicine as well. And so we have these corporations that are really the next place where graduates go into. And I completely just did the opposite. I, in fact, went to Beverly Hills. I picked the best building that, across the street where my father had practiced for 25 years on Roxbury Drive in the Diamond Triangle. And I found where the best dentists were practicing. And I went door to door and I asked if I could sublease a chair in one of their practices. And one of them said yes. And that was my first, quote unquote office. I subleased a chair and I worked for myself from day one. And within 6 months, I had actually ended up, I couldn't afford a large practice. So I purchased a practice off of Craigslist. Someone had a practice for sale, and I ended up being able to negotiate a deal. And I purchased the practice. And within a year out of school, I had my own practice and kind of just doing it my way. And for me, it ended up working. I learned a lot as I was going through the process. A lot of YouTube videos, a lot of weekend CE courses, a lot of continuing education classes, and just grinding it out for the first year or two until things stabilized. And that was kind of what set the tone, was just go out there and get the information. It's out there if you just want to seek it. You just got to go out there and catch it.
Yeah, I think this approach it's a landmark, I would say, for someone who thinks outside the box and, like you said, does everything the other way, like the masses do, and being able to take risks, right? Because one of the things that successful people do is they believe in themselves, even if the risk is very high. And that's what you did. What was your mindset at that time to be able to take that kind of risk? Because the failure, it's very close, and it can happen at any time.
Yeah, I used to drive about an hour to and from work every day, from where I lived to where I ended up purchasing that office. And I started listening to podcasts. And a gentleman that I had met gave me this CD of Tony Robbins, and I think it was called Unleash the Power. It was like a 30-day self-help thing. And I listened to that thing every day on the way to work and back. And one of the things Tony was saying at the time, I must have listened to that thing, I don't know, 7 times probably. I just loved it. Every time I listened to it, I got more out of it. Highly recommended for anyone just who wants to change their mindset. And I think there was 2 things that I remember vividly learning was, as far as risk, what you mentioned is there's no such thing as failure unless if you learn from it, then it's just a lesson, right? Unless it's a catastrophic failure. I used to say, just don't end up in jail and don't die, right? As long as you and don't kill anyone. Right? So as long as you stay within that range, then it's just a learning experience. So I was okay with taking risk, and I was okay with taking a lot of risk early because I would have time to recover. So I'd say a lot of my early, and I'm kind of slowing down at this point. Some would say what I'm doing right now is extremely risky, and we can get into that. But as you progress in your career, you want to take less and less risk. As you have a family and kids, you probably don't want to take as many risky moves. But early on in my career, I think I did a lot of front end risk taking and making lots of mistakes and learning from them and having time to recover. And then looking at it from a lens of this is just what it takes, right? So instead of like being upset and angry that I had to work 12-hour days, worrying about life, work-life balance, I was like, okay, this is how you get ahead. They're on vacation. I'm not going to go away for Christmas this year because while they're resting, I'm remodeling, right? So these little competitive mind games I had with myself and kind of making sure that I look at it from a positive perspective and not looking at it from a negative way that would make me upset or angry that I was, somehow losing. But this was the competitive edge that I was sharpening my knife with. And so I think those 2 things, the mindset really helped early investment, risk taking, and looking at everything as a learning experience.
Yeah, I think that's essential. I remember him saying, Tony Robbins saying that you miss 100% of the shots that you don't take.
Correct.
And that's essential for someone who wants to be successful, because success is not for everybody. And you need to not only take the risks, but you need to be unbalanced. Unbalance creates success. You need to go for what you believe in and, put everything behind it and go for it. And I love what you did. And you mentioned something about the new venture that you're in. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah. So, I having run multiple dental offices, teaching surgery, I started a teaching institution, volunteering, on all these missions during my tenure with, as a clinical dentist. I realized that I didn't really like a lot of the ways that dentistry was being carried out. I didn't see the technology and innovations that were available to us being utilized. I became a trade show junkie, and I used to go to trade shows all the time. So I would go to medical trade shows, technology trade shows, and I would see all these amazing things that were available that unfortunately were not being utilized in our industries, right? And so I really wanted to go out there and be one of the dentists that would go out and seek these innovations and bring it back into our industry. And at the time, this was pre-COVID, several years pre-COVID, we had started doing some level of mobile dentistry, mobile care, like house calls. And I designed this house call kit that I can go into celebrity homes and treat some of my celebrity patients in the comfort of their own home. And we had also utilized Zoom and video conferencing to evaluate what's going on before we go in and to do some of the post-ops. And I thought that had a really viable Uber-type model where we Uberize dentistry and be able to create a mobile application that would allow consumers, whoever they may be, to request these concierge dentists to go into wherever the location is. Whether it was poolside, it was on the beach, it was the housing. I mean, we did dental work in some really cool places for very cool people. And so I thought that was a really unique business model. It didn't require a lot of overhead. But most importantly, I thought that what it would do is it would democratize access to care, not for the rich and famous, but for those who had disabilities, mobility issues, had anxiety and fear about going to the dental office. And it would also democratize office ownership for those who weren't ready to buy an office off Craigslist and who were going the traditional path. And oftentimes by the time they started the practice, they were $1 million in debt. So I thought that we can help both parties, both the providers and the patients. And I ended up selling most of my offices eventually. And there were other life occurrences that helped facilitate this and kind of bring it to realization faster. But ultimately, we partnered with a company named Google, who ended up helping us do our pitch deck and accelerate us. And we actually pitched out of Google headquarters and raised several $1 million to bring now what's the largest teledentistry company in the nation, Dentulu. And we provide at-home remote care for millions of patients across the nation.
That's amazing. Yeah, that's a great concept. And I think you mentioned that you started that pre-pandemic. And I think COVID just made this things much worse because people didn't want to go to dentists, didn't want to expose themselves to any other issues with dentistry. And even doctors didn't want to practice anymore on patients. And I think that was a big opportunity, I would say, for this type of telemedicine dentistry that can flourish, on those times. Looking at yourself, what do you think are skills or habits that you think got you to this point?
I think that it's a combination of, self-talk. You got to be able to control the self-talk and the voice inside your head. Sometimes you want to listen to it, and sometimes you got to understand that the less you listen to it, the better. That it's just talk. And so that's one thing. It's just controlling the voice inside your head.
The negative voice inside your head.
I think just the voice in general, and it's interesting. I've recently read several books that spoke on the subject. I just read don't believe everything you think. And so there's several others that I can reference for you, but just the voice that's constantly going on. Just put that aside and just do it. work through that. That's one thing I would say is just controlling the voice inside your head. Second, I would say is I think showing up every day, it's not really about motivation, because motivation just is like this, right? Sometimes you're very motivated, sometimes you're just not. I think it's about setting habits,
Consistency.
and just being consistent, right? Like, we're waking up today at 5. You may not want to work out today. I don't care if you just sit there, but you're going to wake up at 5 today, and you're going to wake up at 5 every day. Yes, it's Sunday. You're still going to wake up at 5 and just make it a habit, right? I think one of the things I'm constantly telling myself in changing and affecting my behavior is acting like who I want to be. Some people, they want to do this, and do that before they get to this person they want to be. Well, I think that I am this person, and that this behavior should reflect what this person is. So if you want to be a healthy person, well, a healthy person probably doesn't have an entire pizza, or probably isn't going to have McDonald's, or isn't going to smoke and do drugs, right? So I think of myself as have already achieving the goal that I want to achieve, and making sure my behavior follows that persona. And I think just having a positive attitude, like, I do care about what people think. I very much think about what my peers think. And I do listen, and I try to reflect on what's said. But when I do reassess, and I constantly reassess, I may pivot a bit, but at the end of the day, it's because it has to make sense to me, and not what anyone else thinks. I mean, there's plenty of people who I think will believe that teledentistry, for example, is something that cannot be, like, how do you do dentistry at home? Like, what does that even mean? How do you drill and fill? Well, my definition of teledentistry may be different than theirs. And so I don't let their, preconditioned notions affect really what my reality is.
That's very interesting. You believe in yourself, and you go for it. So how does a day look like in the life of Dr. Arash? What do you do every day? What are your habits, routines, books, podcasts, health habits, exercise to be the way you are?
My days kind of change based on need. I don't practice clinically anymore. I still do own and operate some dental offices. I have associates that do the dentistry. But generally, I've tried to free up my time and really focus on getting back the time. And so I wake up at 5 a.m. I'm part of the 5 a.m. club, and it's something I think has been like probably one of the single biggest and best things I've ever done. And I would have never thought I would enjoy waking up at 5 a.m., but giving myself that time to start my day off slowly and not rushed. So I spend the first half hour making myself, tea. And I have, my early morning drink that I like to make myself with a whole bunch of, supplements in it, and, lemon and turmeric and cayenne pepper and salt. And so I have my little early morning routine as I can slowly get out of bed. And I listen the first half hour and the last half hour. I try to listen to some kind of positive audio. So I have Audible, and I wake up and I listen to audiobook when I wake up in the morning as I'm making myself a tea. And then I go into the gym for about an hour. I have a gym here at my house, and I work out here. And so I do that for about an hour every single day. And then the rest of the day is, whatever it is, it's scheduled meetings. And, usually now it's a lot of telecommunications and conversations. And oftentimes I go to my dental offices and check in on my doctors and make sure, the business is doing well. And sometimes I'm traveling to trade shows, doing educational lectures, and whatever else life has whatever it needs. But I allowed myself the flexibility to regain some of my time and address whatever needs addressing, putting out fires where they need to be put out, and
Politics.
And like no television. I don't watch TV. I do get some news here and there, through different channels, but I'm not spending too much time on binge watching shows. And I enjoy going out and seeing concerts and traveling. But really just kind of living in the moment and whatever needs to be done that day.
Yeah, that's great. That's a great approach. I think that's definitely a recipe for success. Kind of focus on yourself and your goals and your mindset to accomplish what you want. How do you see dentistry going? Because, if you think back 20, 30 years ago, we're doing a lot of things that now nobody would do. Like in terms of fillings and technology and materials and all this stuff, we discover, toxic stuff that we use, from the filling materials to the toothpaste to the whatever else, right, we put in our mouth. Where do you think this thing is going?
That's a great question, and that's probably my favorite question to answer. Dentistry is quickly evolving into primary care, because for so long we've been fragmented and separated from the medical counterparts. While we remain as the largest orifice, we swallow into the gut here. We're breathing into the lungs here. Things are entering directly our circulatory system from sublingual capillaries here. So we're entering the body in more ways than
the main portal.
This is it. Yeah, this is the main entry point, right? So you would think that as a whole, both dental and medical, we would have appreciated a lot more of what an impact the oral health can have on overall health. But there's more and more evidence that is showing a direct, we used to say correlation. Now research is showing, we have published articles on Nature showing causation with Alzheimer's and dementia. And look, those are multifactorial, but we're seeing oral bacteria travel through the circulatory system, and some of the byproducts of bacteria like P. gingivalis crossing the blood-brain barrier in 96% of patients that have Alzheimer's and dementia, causing local inflammatory processes that are contributing to those diseases. Direct correlations with diabetes. We're seeing direct correlation with the recurrence of certain cancers. Risks of bacterial endocarditis for patients who've had cardiac surgeries. Correlations with the rate of failure or success rate of joint replacement and organ transplants. We're seeing the impact on fertility and birth rates. So it's all connected, right? And so, teeth can be replaced, but the impact of the oral microbiome on the general health is something that is now starting to be really better understood. So one aspect is just understanding the different microbiomes, where we've studied the gut in depth. Now we're really starting to understand the oral microbiome and the dysbiosis that occurs in the oral microbiome, and really reevaluating whether just killing everything was the right idea, or are we looking for homeostasis and looking to figure out how to control the bacteria rather than kill them. I work with a very interesting company out of Minnesota. I'm the chief dental officer for a company called Primal Health. They have figured out a way to affect the metabolism of pathogens. And so now we're able to put bacteria on a keto diet, which means that we're seeing a 90% reduction in those dangerous red complex periodontal pathogens that are known contributors to a lot of these systemic issues. We're able to get rid of fungal infections, oral fungal infections. We're able to see the rate of cavities go down and karyogenic activity go down. And now we're starting to see downstream impact on the rest of the body as well. This is all from the mouth. So just how we address the bacteria, I think, is huge. To your point, the type of materials that we use in the body, thank God, we have now someone talking about water fluoridation and putting these poisons inside the water systems.
It's amazing to me how so many years we believed in something that now proved to be completely wrong.
Well, and this is controversial. I'm one of the few dentists that still has, I can come out there and tell you, like, this is just stupid. This is just dumb. There's no benefit here for adults to have fluoride in their drinking water. And now with so many ways to remineralize teeth, with so much increased access to care, I think the risks of, water fluoridation certainly do not outweigh their benefits at this point, especially for the broader population. And listen, fluoride is a known, proven, like a way to remineralize teeth and to protect the teeth. But I think topical applications are significantly better. And now we have companies that are helping actually remineralize teeth. And so I think just rampant and blatant fluoridation of water is something, and putting other toxic materials in the water is something that is being reevaluated. And then, things like putting mercury in people's mouths. I mean, when I was growing up, I'm sure you'll remember, we used to have thermometers with mercury in it. And
yes.
they
I remember being a child, and I broke one of the mercury thermometers in my mom's house, and playing with the mercury on the floor. We had no idea.
Right. Well, I used to do that in my dad's dental office. I open up the little mercury capsules and play around with it. And so they've outlawed, like, God forbid you have a mercury thermometer because you can potentially expose yourself to mercury, but we're going to put it in your mouth.
Right.
Like, okay, that's very small.
Right.
Right. So, and so, yes, there's a lot of, like, I think, shifting of focus on using more biocompatible materials.
The same thing I read a couple of days ago about the mouthwash studies that they came out with like completely different results, right? We were thought to believe that it's great to use mouthwash, and most of it is like 90% alcohol, and you kill everything under the sun in your oral cavity.
You know, your mouthwash can kill certain patients. You have patients who are hypertensive, right? And we know that certain bacteria in the mouth can actually create some of, they're involved in creating the nitrates and nitrites inside the mouth. And these regulate the blood pressure, right? These regulate the vasculature. And so you kill these good bacteria and they're not creating some of these, nitrates that you need in your body. So now you're getting, instead of vasodilation, you're getting vasoconstriction. So you're elevating the blood pressure. So yeah, I mean, if you have a high blood pressure and you're using an alcohol-based mouthwash, I mean, you don't need mouthwash at all. So I think completely just throw away all the mouthwash and focus on, first of all, checking the oral microbiome, right? We use salivary testing. This is one of the things we do at Dentulu is we do a saliva test, and we send that to a laboratory the same way you physicians send a blood work to a lab. And we check for those specific biomarkers in the oral cavity. We check for those specific pathogens. And then we're able to give you an empirical evaluation of what's going on and then customize recommendations on how to improve those. So better testing, better materials, early intervention. And part of what we do at home now is, I mean, that's where prevention lives. Prevention doesn't live in our offices. By the time they get to you and I mean, we're reacting now, right? Something, blood pressure's gone up, or your biomarkers show this, or your cavity, or your gums are bleeding. I mean, you want to prevent, you got to do that at home. So that's what Dentulu does, is we do at-home saliva testing. We've invented, one of the things I invented early on was this camera. And this is something similar to what dentists use in the home, but just like you have a blood pressure cuff at home, we now use the mouth cam at home. And now you're able to evaluate and screen your own mouth for early signs of cavities, early signs of gum disease, early signs of oral cancer. And so doctors can actually engage their patients at home, and patients can do a certain level of self-monitoring. But remote patient monitoring, I think, is definitely something that's going to help advance preventive care.
Yeah, that's amazing.
But we find this early, we can reverse it, right? We don't have to get to that point where we have to extract the tooth.
Right. No, and like you said, prevention is essential in dentistry, right? Because it's something that the patient needs to do every day, consistently at some point, to not have a cavity. And if you educate or show him how to do it, or show him at least how to find out if he has it or not, that's a great thing.
And I think also the big other component is oxygen, right? Oxygen. Like I think sleep apnea is probably one of the most under treated and underdiagnosed really problems, conditions that we have. I mean, so many people think snoring is normal. Waking up tired is normal. Being irritable is just because you probably don't like work, But most people, especially with the amount of the weight that people have gained recently, is we're now experiencing so much more sleep disturbances. So this is our area. This is where dentists. I mean, the primary method to address sleep apnea should not be CPAPs. They have a poor compliance rate. Nobody likes to wear them. And frankly, we can address these issues with FDA-approved oral appliances. We wear a night guard that, it's called a mandibular advancement device. It's like a night guard. And we slightly bring the jaw forward at night, brings the tongue forward, opens up the airway, and voila, we're breathing better again. And so this is another area I think dentists are going to really play a critical role is addressing sleep apnea for the masses.
Yeah, it's amazing. I think that's an epidemic of sleep apnea at this point. And I encounter so many patients in my line of care too that are completely disabled by this condition, and they don't even know it, most of them. And they have, like you said, consequential affected organs because of that. One of the, I think the primary cause of atrial fibrillation is sleep apnea also.
I mean, 5 times
Um,
increased risk of cancer. We got hypertension. We have, I mean, so many different diseases I can tell you. I mean,
Yeah.
even another predisposing factor to Alzheimer's, dementia, increased rate of diabetes, increased rate of heart attack and stroke. So look, everything is multifactorial. It's not that linear. But when you start adding up all these different variables, I think you're talking about, multifactorial contributors that are just increasing the rates. And that's why we're seeing so many people suffer from so many more diseases today. And we're more sedentary. We're not exercising as much. Our diets are horrible. So, but I think you got to be able to breathe. You got to have oxygen. If you're not getting your rest, I mean, it's hard to function. And so we've seen a dramatic improvement of our patients' lives. Now, so this is something we do now nationwide. At Dentulu, you can order one of these rings at home, very similar to the Aura ring, except it's FDA approved. And it can actually get you a medical physician is on the other side that is evaluating your sleep. They can see if you have sleep apnea. They're looking at all your vitals over a period of several nights, and they're able to screen you now for sleep apnea. It's covered by your medical insurance. And so I invite a lot of the physicians to start working with their dental counterparts. We can help better serve our patients together. I would invite a lot of physicians to start looking at testing their patients for sleep apnea and being able to recommend oral appliances, whether it's to a local dentist or referring it to Dentulu. We can then deliver these oral appliances to these patients safely and effectively. And then we do remote patient monitoring after we've delivered these to make sure we get data back to the referring physician to make sure that there's efficacy there and there's compliance there. And similarly, I would invite physicians, cardiologists, oncologists, family physicians, everyone to start also testing the saliva, because the oral dysbiosis, the imbalances in the oral microbiome have a direct impact on so many of other systemic issues. And there should be that conversation between the physicians and the dentist about what's going on here in the oral cavity. And I think you can start with a simple saliva test that can be administered even from a physician's office.
Yeah, that's an amazing idea. Actually, I think a lot of diseases could be diagnosed also from a different types of enzymes that are in saliva and, components of it. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we have now, all those biomarkers that are in the blood are also in the saliva. A lot of those can be determined. The problem and challenge they had in the past was that a lot of these testing modalities couldn't separate these biomarkers. But now with better technology, we can actually find those biomarkers. I work closely with a company called Biome. And Biome has an incredible test that looks they're looking at millions of biomarkers, and they do a test where they take the saliva, the blood, and a fecal test all simultaneously. And you'll be able to order this again on our company at Dentulu. You can order this test to your home, and it'll give you so many insights into your oral health and into your overall health that you'll never get these in a traditional, physician's office, because we're just looking at so many different things. And one of the unique things they're looking at is not just at the presence of DNA, for example. They're looking at transcription and translation. They're looking at whether those RNA, not DNA, but RNA is actually being converted into proteins, and whether those specific problematic proteins are being created. So not only the presence of pathogens, but are those pathogens actually active and causing a problem? And how do you get actionable results and customized supplements, for example? They're customizing supplements for your particular need. For the first time in history now, you can have your own supplements that are designed just for you based on your own biomarkers. So, I think this is exciting. I think this is really where the future is going to be, is focused on prevention, minimally invasive care. And I think all of this comes with the Uberization of our industries, which means making this accessible to people at home, probably just on their cellular device. It's affordable, it's transparent, and it's easy to access.
This is real biohacking. Like you're going to the personalized markers of someone.
That's right.
And tailor the treatment and the supplements based on their enzymatic profile, their DNA profile, their methylation profile, whatever it is. But you actually create a big difference in each individual, rather than just say, well, just take vitamin D3 and you'll see what happens.
Well, exactly. And how much vitamin D3 is good for you? I was eating beets every day, right? Beets are good for you. Cacao is great for you, right? I was just routinely having all these things. And so through this test, I realized that there's a specific virus that is only in beets. I forget what it was called, like Western beet virus or something like that. And when I took this test, it said, well, you should stay off the beets for a month because you have this specific virus that is only in beets. Like, how would I ever known that? How would I ever know that I'm eating too much turmeric or too much cacao or, and so they give me actionable recommendations on what type of supplements to take, what type of food to eat, what type of food to avoid, and what fits my particular body profile. And then I regulate my sleep based on, the ring that I wear every single night. And, even my scale now gives me feedback on my body weight, I'm looking at how much the water saturation I have in my body. I'm looking at my visceral fat levels. I'm looking at my BMI. I just stand on the scale and it's giving me all this information. So I think the information is there if you seek it. And I think ultimately each individual owes it to themselves to empower themselves with more information and hopefully, better their own.
Yeah. I think in general, you cannot change or improve anything unless you measure it.
That's right.
So just by having a certain marker measured, you can, change that kind of disease or treatment or whatever it is to improve your life.
That's right. That's right.
Dr. Arash, I want to take a little step aside and talk a little bit about the medical professional in general's financial situation. We make a lot of money. We spend a lot of money. And at the end, we want to retire. We want to not get burned out, or we just don't practice clinically anymore. And the importance of the passive income streams becomes crucial for some people. What do you think about this? What's your strategy? What's your planning, so to speak, for yourself?
I think that again depends on when you start. I think one of the other things I learned early on was, the compounding and the power of compounding, and starting early.
The best kept secret in the world.
Yeah, I don't know. I think it's pretty much out there. It's like, are you going to do it though? And so I think if you, I don't know if it's much of a secret, but I think it has to become a habit. It's funny. I'll tell you the one side, and then we'll get to the serious. So part of me spends a lot of money. I give away a lot of money. I donate a lot of money because psychologically in my head, that trains my brain to realize that it's okay because there's more coming. So I don't have I have an abundance mindset where I know that I can feel comfortable spending money because I also know that there's more coming. And I think for people who have that scarcity mindset, I think it's difficult to progress. And so I like to spend money. And so that's that side. But I think setting yourself up for success means that you should set yourself up with passive income. Well, one of the early books I read, and I actually met this gentleman, and he was one of the other really instrumental people in my life, was Robert Kiyosaki. Robert Kiyosaki's book, Rich Dad Poor Dad, is like, you got to read that. Basics is, that was probably one of his best-selling books. I think it was his best-selling book. And it describes this quadrant, right? It has the ESBI, employee, self-employed, business, and
investor.
So employee is, it is what it is. And you're not going to really get anywhere as an employee. Your people are buying your time. And that's just a trade-off. You give your time up for money, which, really doesn't let you really get anywhere in life. You're just kind of going to where you're going. If you step outside of that and want a little bit more control over yourself, you become self-employed. You start a business. And you're in a lot more control of, how you spend your time. And if you spend more time, you will make more money, right? Ideally. Most dentists and doctors fall into that, is they're self-employed. And I really learned early on that I had to shift into the B and I, where, and here's the litmus test. This is a very easy litmus test to see if you're B or an S. A true business is where you, the business owner, can leave for 2 months. And when you come back, the business is doing better than when you left it. That's a true business. So if you're a surgeon, if you're a dentist, and you go on vacation for 2 months and your office is shut down, you don't have a business. You're self-employed. And so I left Beverly Hills early. I went and I bought that office on Craigslist in an area where I can own the property. I could pay myself rent, and I can hire associates to do the work, and I can just oversee and participate when necessary, but I could step away. And that's why I was able to go out and volunteer and teach and travel and learn and try things because I wasn't stuck inside the office in someone's mouth, right? And so the transition from S to B is the first step. So now you're working hard, but other people are working hard for you, and you're making money, and you don't necessarily have to be doing all the work. And so that was a kind of a unique transition. And when I transitioned into owning my own company, for the first time I ever experienced having to create a pitch deck and pitching to people and getting investors. Like that was not something I ever thought I would do in my life, and asking people for money. But a few of my peers invested in me. When I was in Google, Dr. Shervin Malayam was a close friend of mine. He was my first investor, and he's someone I grew up with. And he showed up and, and he invested over $500,000 into my company. And that triggered something in my head. I was like, wait, he's a dentist. What the hell is he doing investing, in a startup? That's for sharks on Shark Tank. Like, what is he doing? And so as I continued to go to these different events where I was pitching and I was hearing other people pitch, I realized that, hey, I can pick out some good stuff that I think that would really work well. And there's a certain level of education, just like everything else you have to take, and a certain amount of due diligence. And believe me, you learn really quickly when your own money is on the line. You learn a lot of things fast. What's a safe note? What's a convertible note? What's a cap? What is a C Corp and an S Corp? So you learn these things very quickly. And so I invested in a couple of other companies, and I started advising for other companies. And so I get the opportunity to work with other startups and learn from them. And now I'm kind of in this B and I category where I'm investing in other business owners and entrepreneurs. I certainly have my own businesses, and so I think that's been a very cool opportunity for me to use my industry knowledge and expertise and gain equity that can have a very good passive income and future ROI.
Very good, very good. Yeah, I think that's a great explanation. And I remember meeting Robert Kiyosaki almost 25 years ago, when he was giving this little tours around the country to sell his game, Cash Flow Quadrant.
Monopoly, yes.
Monopoly, the cash flow game. And he was writing this book, Rich Dad Poor Dad, to market the game, actually. And he had a small little event in Virginia, and I went there, and I, obviously listened to the speech and the stuff, and the book just came out. And now 20 something years later, it's one of the best bestsellers in the world. And I certainly, like you said, in the business and entrepreneurial worlds, everybody needs to read that book, because it changes the mindset completely from what you used to know.
I mean, so then and there's a whole other area, like invest in real estate, be your own landlord. I never would open up another business in a brick and mortar that I don't own. So I bought every office that I opened up, I made sure I purchased the property first, and I opened up my practice on my own property. And now whoever's running that office is my tenant. And, investing in commodities like gold and silver, and a little bit of Bitcoin. And like diversification doesn't mean buying a bunch of different stocks. Diversification means true diversification. When you're in real estate, you're in owning
different assets,
completely different asset types.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, look, if you're never, very few of us are ever going to be able to have true abundance in retirement from being just practitioners. We have to invest that money into something else that's going to have the money work for us. So, and the sooner you do that, the sooner it is. Last week, I was just learning about bonds. Because I was like, what are municipal bonds? So now I'm learning about municipal bonds, and I'm going to get involved in some unis. So it's an ongoing learning experience, and it's increased diversification. And when your eyes are open to it, you start to see more of it.
Right.
You buy your first Corvette, and you start to notice all the other Corvettes on the right, right? And so, yeah, it's just a matter of just kind of opening up your eyes so that your brain is actually stopping to see some of these opportunities that are everywhere. Yeah.
You need to find some assets to make you money while you sleep. Otherwise, you're gonna work until you die.
Well, and part of it is investing in companies, right? I mean, I love what I do. I think my company is going to be a potential unicorn company, and I have people investing in me, and so I'm here working my butt off, not only for myself but also for my investors. So you find someone you believe in, you find a company that you believe in, a technology you understand, and that you do your studying and due diligence. And to a certain degree, there's a level of risk, but it's just part of the nature. Everything comes with risk, and so you invest what you feel comfortable in these companies. And and learn about them and hopefully, and then reinvest in your own practices, right? I mean, invest in new technologies to better serve your patients. There's so many cool things that are coming out. Reinvest in your main money maker, which is your practice. That's oftentimes the best investment you can make, and increase your cash flow. And then you can go out there and invest some of that cash flow in other potential investments.
Retrospectively, with what you know right now, what kind of advice would you give to yourself years back?
I wish I would have focused on my health much better when I was younger. During college, during my university, I wouldn't have pulled so many all-nighters. I would have slept better. I would have not reached for, the Subways and some of the fast foods. I would have cooked a lot more. I wish I would have given myself a little more time for better mental and physical health. Because I abused my body a lot early on, as we all do, right? We're like in between patients, we're like munching, like sit down and eat and meditate a little bit and get good sleep. Because that'll catch up to you. Other than that, I really don't have too many regrets. I think it's all been learning experiences, and I think I've been kind and honest and fair to the people with whom I've interacted. And I think that it's just about self-improvement. And I wish I had started that journey of self-improvement a little earlier, but that yesterday is already passed. So I'm not gonna dwell on it. I just work out harder and eat better now, and hopefully it'll make up for it.
Yeah, absolutely. How can someone get in touch with you and your new projects and ideas?
Yeah, follow me on LinkedIn. You can also follow me on Instagram under The Modern Dentist. You can go to drarash.com or follow my company Dentulu, Dentulu. And if you want it bad enough, I'll be easy to reach. And hopefully I'll be able to help anyone in their journey. But I appreciate you inviting me on the show, and I wish continued success to you on your new podcast. And it sounds like you're gonna spread a lot of love and positive messages to your community. So I wish you nothing but success.
Thank you, and I appreciate you being on the show. And I think the audience is going to learn a lot from this interview, and also from me, following you, because you are a very inspiring person. And I wish you a lot of success. And I think we need to circle back probably in a year or so to see where you are again.
Thank you. I look forward to it.
Thank you.
See you soon.
That's a wrap on Stellar Success, Leveling Up for Medical Pros with Dr. Tudor Francu. Interested in joining us? Go to stellarsuccesspodcast.com/guest to apply. Stay stellar and level up.